The moment you stop staying silent in a toxic workplace, you become dangerous. Not because you did something wrong, but because toxic bosses survive through control. And the moment an employee questions them, sets boundaries, reports unfair treatment, or refuses emotional manipulation, the workplace atmosphere suddenly changes. The smiles disappear. The tension increases. And slowly, you begin feeling punished in ways nobody else seems to notice. Because toxic bosses rarely destroy employees openly. The smartest ones do it quietly. Psychologically. Emotionally. Socially. And honestly. Many employees don't realize they're being retaliated against until the stress completely destroys their mental health. If this video feels painfully relatable at any point, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and comment below. I experienced this. Because millions of employees are silently dealing with toxic workplace retaliation right now while blaming themselves for the emotional damage it creates. So let's talk about the 7 ways toxic bosses punish employees who speak up. And once you notice these patterns, you'll never look at workplace manipulation the same way again. 1. They suddenly become emotionally cold. One of the first punishments is emotional withdrawal. At first, your boss may have seemed supportive, friendly, approachable, even encouraging. But the moment you speak up, question something, or stop tolerating mistreatment, their entire energy changes. Suddenly, the warmth disappears. Their tone becomes colder. Their responses become shorter. They stop acknowledging you emotionally. And slowly, you begin feeling like an outsider inside the workplace. That emotional confusion is intentional. Because toxic bosses often punish employees through emotional distance rather than direct confrontation. Why? Because emotional coldness creates anxiety, self-doubt, and psychological instability. You start wondering, did I do something wrong? Am I overreacting? Why does everything feel different now? And over time, that emotional tension becomes exhausting. If you've ever felt the office atmosphere suddenly shift after speaking up, comment below. The energy changed. Because honestly, that experience is far more common than people realize. 2. They start watching everything you do. This is where the punishment becomes more visible. Suddenly, your work is constantly questioned. Small mistakes become major issues. You're monitored more closely. They check every detail. Every decision suddenly needs approval. And emotionally, you start feeling watched all the time. That's not leadership. That's intimidation. Because toxic bosses often use micromanagement to psychologically re-establish dominance after feeling challenged. The goal is simple. Make you feel emotionally unsafe. And over time, constant monitoring creates something dangerous psychologically. Hypervigilance. You begin overthinking everything. Second-guessing yourself constantly. Feeling anxious before even opening emails. That's how toxic workplaces slowly damage nervous systems over time. Not through one massive event, but through constant psychological pressure. 3. They quietly isolate you. This is one of the most emotionally painful punishments. Because it's subtle. Suddenly, you stop getting invited to meetings. Coworkers act differently. Information stops reaching you. Conversations become awkward. And slowly, you begin feeling emotionally excluded. That isolation is often intentional. Because toxic bosses understand something powerful psychologically. Humans fear social rejection deeply. So instead of directly attacking employees, they quietly damage their workplace belonging. And honestly, this type of emotional isolation destroys confidence faster than people realize. Because eventually, you stop feeling safe anywhere inside the office. And the terrifying part? Most people around you may not even notice what's happening. That's why so many employees leave toxic jobs feeling emotionally broken, confused, and unable to explain the damage clearly. If this video is hitting harder than expected, share it with someone currently struggling in a toxic workplace. Because many employees secretly feel isolated and psychologically exhausted right now. And subscribe for more deep workplace psychology and emotional workplace truths every week. 4. They create impossible standards. This stage emotionally destroys hardworking employees. Because suddenly, nothing you do feels good enough anymore. The expectations constantly change. The criticism increases. The goalposts move endlessly. And eventually, you stop feeling competent altogether. That confusion is intentional. Because toxic bosses often create unstable environments to maintain emotional control. If success becomes impossible to define, employees remain emotionally dependent on approval. That's why some employees work harder and harder after speaking up, yet somehow receive less respect than before. And over time, that psychological instability creates burnout, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. Not because employees are weak, but because the human nervous system was never designed to function under endless emotional tension. 5. They damage your reputation quietly. This is where the manipulation becomes dangerous. Because toxic bosses rarely retaliate directly. Instead, they slowly influence how other people see you. Small comments, passive jokes, subtle criticism, questioning your attitude. And before long, coworkers begin treating you differently emotionally. That's why many targeted employees eventually feel misunderstood, isolated, and emotionally trapped. Because psychologically, humans rely heavily on social belonging. So when a toxic boss quietly damages your reputation, it creates emotional instability everywhere around you. And honestly, this is one of the darkest parts of toxic workplace culture. Because the employee often starts doubting themselves instead of recognizing the manipulation. 6. They overload you emotionally. Another common punishment is emotional overload. Suddenly, more work appears. More deadlines. More pressure. More impossible expectations. And emotionally, you begin drowning. Because toxic bosses often punish outspoken employees by overwhelming them psychologically. Not always to improve performance, but to exhaust resistance. And honestly, many employees eventually stop speaking up simply because they become too emotionally exhausted to keep fighting. That's how toxic systems survive. Through emotional burnout. Not loyalty. 7. They try to make you doubt yourself. This is the final stage. And honestly, the most psychologically damaging one. At some point, the toxic boss stops attacking your work and starts attacking your confidence, your memory, your emotions, your self-trust. And slowly, you begin wondering, maybe I really am the problem. That's the trap. Because once employees disconnect from their own intuition, control becomes easier. This is why toxic workplace retaliation can leave emotional scars long after employees leave. Because the damage isn't just professional. It becomes psychological. And honestly, Many people don't realize how manipulated they were until after they escape the environment completely. So if this video connected with you emotionally, comment below. What's the most toxic thing a boss ever did after you spoke up? I genuinely read the comments. And conversations like this matter because millions of employees silently feel trapped inside emotionally unhealthy workplaces right now. Also, like this video if you've ever experienced retaliation for speaking honestly at work. Share it with someone currently struggling under toxic leadership. And subscribe for more deep workplace psychology, emotional realism, and cinematic corporate storytelling every week. Because toxic bosses don't just punish employees professionally. Sometimes they slowly punish people psychologically for refusing to stay silent.